you all ready to nerd out about giant steps? Let's go do it. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rubicki. As always, please like, please subscribe, please check for a PDF below related to our topic today, which is the great tune Giant Steps, John Coltrane's tour de force that everybody knows. And for good reason, because it's amazing and very, very difficult, and that makes it really, really a fun challenge to try to deal with. This is in a series of videos that I'm doing on this channel that I call Essential Bass Lines. Now, why is what Paul Chambers, who is the bassist on this recording, why is what he's doing essential? Isn't the tune itself essential? And we tend to think about just the chords themselves. They are often called the Coltrane progression or train changes, in the way that he created a sort of system of movement, of progressions that were, to my understanding, an exercise for himself to work out new sounds. The way that Paul Chambers navigates these quickly moving chords in the head itself is very, very special. That's why I feel like it's essential to understand what's happening. Not only is Paul playing a sort of a counterpoint to the melody itself, he is negotiating these quickly changing chords that change key centers very quickly in a very elegant and clever way. To repeat what we heard just before at the beginning of the video, the basic two parts of the main melody go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? B, A, G, F, E flat. Why is this important? Let's take a look at the chords more carefully and see what notes he chose. So the beginning chord is B major. Let's arpeggiate that. B, D sharp, F sharp, A sharp. Paul plays a B on there. Play the root just like we normally do. Great. The next chord, which is in beat 3 of the first bar, is D7. Let's arpeggiate that. It's D, F sharp, A, C. What does Paul play here? Rather than playing the root, which is a sort of weird jump, this minor third, he plays A natural, the 5th of D7. Root 3, 5. So B, A, that's what he's playing. The next note is, the next chord in bar 2 is G major 7. He plays the root again. Let's arpeggiate that. G, B, D, F sharp. He plays G. The next chord is a B flat 7. Again, a jump of a minor third in the roots. An awkward thing to sort of jump all around. He once again plays the 5th of that, F natural, which is a whole step down from G. So right now, where we are in the bass line is, let's arpeggiate that B flat 7. B flat, D, F, A flat. So he plays the 5th again. So right now, at this point, we're at root, 5th of D, root of G, 5th of B flat, and then the root of E flat is the next chord. Let's arpeggiate that, E flat, G, B flat, D natural, okay? Then there's a turnaround, a 2-5, that goes back to starting with G. So this sort of relationship of the chords starts now with G. The chord roots here in bar 5 are G major 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7, F sharp 7, B major 7. And Paul does the same thing that he did at the beginning. He's playing this descending line in whole steps. He starts with the root, G, B flat 7 is the next chord. He plays the 5th, F, E flat major 7 is the next chord. He plays the root. And then F sharp 7, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E. He plays the 5th, C sharp. So at this point we're G, F, E flat, C sharp, which is also D flat, and then B major 7 is the next chord. He plays the root B. So in total, those first 8 measures, 2, 5. And what is so hip about that, as I mentioned, is that this is such a clever way to navigate something that is jumping up and down. Rather than following that, he's sort of not only doing a counterpoint to the melody, but a counter idea in staying very linear, right? This symmetric scale, or the part of a symmetric scale called a whole tone scale. So these relationships to the notes to each other and to the chords is such a sort of a clever thing. Again, I don't know who came up with it, whether it was John Coltrane or Paul Chambers, but it's really, really great. Part of why it's great is that it gives us options when we are playing this song. It gives us something to hold on to as we think about trying to create our own lines in this difficult way. You may not always use it necessarily, but it can anchor you in the sense of where am I going and where am I coming from and so on and so forth. Because trying to like arpeggiate all of these very, very quickly is impossible for bass players. Well, not for some bass players, right? But for me, it's impossible. So what is so hip about this additionally is that, as I mentioned, this progression of notes implies what's called a whole tone scale. A whole tone scale, if you're not familiar, is a symmetric scale. That means that all notes are equidistant from each other, and all notes are a whole step apart. So for example, if we have a C whole tone scale, we start with C, we play a whole step up, which is D, a whole step up from there is E, a whole step up from there, F sharp, a whole step from there, G sharp, a whole step from there is A sharp, also B flat, and then we get to C. That's a whole step from there. That sound is generally associated with augmented, some kind of augmented fifth or an augmented chord, or generally like a dominant 7 sharp 5. You can sort of use it on a major 7 sharp 5. But the point I'm going for here is the word augmented or an augmented triad. Check this out. In the tune itself, in Giant Steps itself, the three main key centers are B major, E flat major, and G major. The roots of those form an augmented triad. In fact, it forms 3. If we start with B major, B, D sharp, and B augmented, I should say, F sharp is the 5th. We're going to raise that by half step to F double sharp, or G. So root 3, sharp 5. And then because of the symmetric nature of this sound, those 3 notes can be put in any order and still be an augmented triad. So if we did E flat augmented, E flat, this is the root, G is the 3rd, and then B flat would be the normal 5th. We're going to raise that by a half step to a sharp 5 to B natural. And the other part of this triad sort of magic, this augmented triad magic, is G augmented. So we've got G is the root, B is the 3rd, and then D sharp is the sharp 5th. Again, this sound is associated with a whole tone scale, like you can play a whole tone sound over an augmented triad sound. Let's go even further. Let's go another step. Think about the cycle of 4ths and 5ths. And let me pop it up here on the screen. You can certainly think about the relationship of these keys to one another. I mean, we do even in what we call it, right? Going one direction is everyone is up a 4th, and going the other direction, everything is up a 5th, and so on. Well, people have spent a lot of time thinking about relationships between each of these key centers, and John Coltrane certainly did. Take a look at a drawing in his own hand of some sort of analysis or relationships that he used in thinking about the sounds of these key centers. Look at this image. He spent a lot of time thinking about it. He was always in pursuit of something special, something new, something greater, and eventually something very, very spiritual to him. We can connect, as you can see sort of in this image from John Coltrane, you can connect different key centers to each other. When you connect the 3 key centers that he's using, it forms an exact triangle. B, E flat, and G. And what's cool is that you can spin that in any direction, it's always a triangle. An augmented triad is always a triangle. Now apparently, perhaps in classical music analysis, I'm not totally sure, I did some research, I didn't get definitive answers, but apparently the triangle used to be some kind of shorthand for an augmented triad, just an augmented triad, possibly because of this shape within the circle of 4ths. Now, if anybody knows more definitively, please feel free to tell me. I really want to know. What I saw online and what I've sort of, observed over my career is that there's not really clear answers about a lot of this stuff, but nonetheless, it's cool to think about. So we have this triangle, yes, which is connected to the whole tone scale, which is connected to augmented triad, which is connected to the key centers of Giant Steps. John Coltrane is sort of incorrectly, but still connected to the idea of using the triangle 7 to represent major 7, or just the triangle to represent major 7. He is associated with that. Yusef Lateef wrote that he was the originator of using this shorthand symbol. Although at the same year we have proof that Wayne Shorter did, and even earlier, a few years earlier, it seemed that maybe Jerry Mulligan was using this too. It's very gray. Nonetheless, Coltrane is often cited as being the originator of this triangle shorthand, right? So we've got a triangle in the key centers. We've got a triangle associated with him being used on his most famous song. And then we've got this bass line that is basically a whole tone scale used to connect it all. It's fascinating. Additionally, if you want to sort of stretch a little bit further, Coltrane, as I mentioned, was very interested in pursuing a spiritual path, in sort of invoking a higher power for himself and for the world. And there is certainly, as you probably know, an association between the number 3 and things that are sort of divine on some level, right? There is an association, whether mythical or not, with a pyramid and a sense of the number 3 being very important in a lot of spiritual beliefs. And so there's another sort of connection to this whole tone, augmented triangle thing going on. So there is really this symbolic sort of this geometric symbolism that is happening in this song that is essentially just an exercise, but became, you know, a rite of passage for us jazz musicians. So when we are creating bass lines for these changes, notice on the attached PDF, the full transcription of Paul Chambers' bass line, a couple things. The first is he is playing so many repeated ideas. This is very fast tempo, and again, it's hard to play these changes. He is finding ideas and really, really sticking to them. There's probably, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like maybe like 10 to 12 sort of basic ideas that he repeats over and over and over again, just mixing them up. When an E flat occurs in this place, he plays this one thing. When it occurs in the next place, he might play that again, or he plays the other of his ideas that go with E flat. That's fine. And I think in a sense that gives us permission too to remember that it's okay to repeat ourselves in bass lines, especially when something is as challenging as this is. So he repeats himself a lot. What's also neat is as you see the progression of the song going, he discovers some new things as it goes. Like he starts and sort of repeats these series of ideas, and you almost are inside his head like, okay, he was getting tired of what he was doing, and so he was trying to find something different to still honor what the chords were. And because of, again, the symmetric nature of these chords, you can find a lot of neat things that will allow you to feel a little more free. For example, if we look at the first 2 measures, we've got B major 7, D7, G major 7, and B flat 7, right? We can play the roots, B, D, G, B flat, E flat. Great, it resolves the E flat, you all know that. But if we play B flat, D sharp, so this is beat 2, that takes us, we're just now a half step away from the next root, which is D. So, see what I'm saying? Then it goes, if you go down the whole step to the flat 7, so D, C, then now we're a half step away from B natural, which is the 3rd of G major 7, which is happening there. And then if you go to, you could keep doing multiple things, but you could certainly stay there and then play B flat, which is the next chord. You play the root there if you want. But those kinds of things where beginning the arpeggio of one of these chords will lead you very close to a chord tone of the next chord. So there's lots of ways to discover how to navigate these chords, and it will provide you with some really interesting pathways that you can apply to other songs that have less of this kind of challenge in the chord progression. What I would recommend is to really, really take time, and as I've talked about before, actually write out, or at least take time to figure out what sounds good and then write it down, your options for going from one chord to the next. You could simply repeat this descending whole tone thing that we did. That's one simple option. pretty boring though, right? But if you do even part of it, we got B, B, A, and then the next chord is G major, G, F sharp, F is the fifth of E flat, D, that's the third of B flat, E flat there. So lots of options like that. So please do check it out. I hope that you are as excited about this sort of connection in this tune as I was, as I am, and I hope that it was helpful for you today. Please remember to like, subscribe, look for a partial PDF below, and also the full transcription is available. And remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.